Damien Darkblood's post-credit scene in the Invincible Season 3 finale has blown everybody's mind. A forgotten character is shaping a completely fresh character arc that's not even in the comics. That's why we're going to explore everything there is to know about Damien Darkblood in the Invincible universe. Robert Kirkman's Invincible universe is populated with countless memorable characters, from the titular hero himself to various aliens, monsters, and alternate dimension entities. Among these characters stands the curious figure of Damien Darkblood, the self-proclaimed demon detective. Despite his limited appearances in the original comic book series, Darkblood has captured the imagination of many readers and later viewers of the Amazon Prime adaptation. This comprehensive exploration delves into the complete story of Damien Darkblood as presented in the original Invincible comics, examining his origins, role in the narrative, character design, and ultimate legacy within Kirkman's sprawling superhero universe. Let's begin.
Same as you. Discover clues, catch killers.
Murky and vague. Origins of the Demon Detective. Damien Darkblood first appeared in the early issues of Invincible as a denizen of Hell who had come to Earth to work as a private detective. His moniker, the Demon Detective, was not merely metaphorical. He was literally a demon who had escaped from the infernal realms and chosen to operate as an investigator of superhero-related matters on Earth. Despite this intriguing premise, Kirkman provided remarkably little backstory for the character in the original comics, leaving much of Darkblood's history shrouded in mystery. The lack of a detailed origin story for Damien Darkblood was a deliberate choice by creator Robert Kirkman. According to available information, Kirkman initially planned to develop a storyline that would explore Darkblood's history and his connection to Hell, but ultimately decided against it. This decision left Darkblood as something of an enigma within the Invincible universe, a character whose potential was largely unrealized on the comic page. The only glimpse into Darkblood's past comes in issue number 10, where he responds to a taunt from a rival investigator with an ominous statement. "There was a time when I would have eaten your face for speaking to me that way. Be thankful that I've changed my ways." This single line suggests a violent past and hints at a personal reformation, but the comics never elaborate further on what prompted this change or what Darkblood's life in Hell entailed before his arrival on Earth.
A surface dweller, you say?
Damien equals Hellboy, mixed with Rorschach. Visually, Damien Darkblood represents a clear homage to several iconic comic book characters. His appearance draws significant inspiration from Mike Mignola's Hellboy, featuring red skin, a demonic origin, and a distinctive beige trench coat. Elements that would be immediately recognizable to readers familiar with Dark Horse's famous supernatural detective. This visual similarity reinforces Darkblood's positioning as a demonic entity operating in the human world as a force for justice, however reluctant or complicated that role might be. Even more pronounced is Darkblood's debt to Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' Rorschach from Watchmen. The character sports Rorschach's trademark outfit, a trench coat, white scarf, fedora, and purple suit. Beyond these visual cues, Darkblood also adopts Rorschach's distinctive speech pattern and mannerisms, frequently using the interjection "herm" in his dialogue, a direct callback to Rorschach's character tic. These references position Darkblood within a tradition of hard-boiled detective characters in comics, particularly those with a dark or morally ambiguous edge. The connections to established comic archetypes extend beyond visual design. Darkblood is also referred to in both the comics and later adaptations as simply the Demon, a name that carries significance for readers familiar with Jack Kirby's creation, Etrigan the Demon. Like Darkblood, Etrigan was a demon who escaped from Hell to live in the human world, fighting on the side of good while never fully abandoning his demonic nature. This parallel situates Darkblood within a larger comic book tradition of demonic anti-heroes whose infernal origins complicate their heroic endeavors.
Bex, how long until sun does too?
His major role in Guardian Globe murder investigation. Darkblood's primary role in the Invincible comics revolves around his investigation into the murders of the Guardians of the Globe, Earth's premier superhero team. After the Guardians are found brutally slaughtered, Darkblood takes it upon himself to solve the case, approaching it with the methodical determination of a classic noir detective. This investigation constitutes nearly the entirety of Darkblood's narrative contribution to the comic series. The investigation begins with Darkblood formulating his initial theory, that someone had used the stolen powers of Black Samson, a former Guardian who had lost his abilities, to commit the murders. This theory is quickly disputed by Omni-Man, Earth's most powerful hero and father of the titular Invincible. Undeterred, Darkblood proceeds to interrogate Samson directly. Upon witnessing Samson's genuine shock and grief at learning of his former teammates' deaths, Darkblood concludes that Samson is innocent and moves on to consider other suspects. With his initial theory disproven, Darkblood shifts his focus to the various villains the Guardians had battled over the years, methodically working through potential culprits who might have had both motive and ability to execute such a devastating attack. However, this line of investigation also proves fruitless, leaving the demon detective without viable leads. In a moment that encapsulates Kirkman's approach to the character in the comics, Darkblood returns to the crime scene only to be mocked by his fellow agents, characters resembling Christian Walker and Dina Pilgrim from Powers, another superhero comic series. This derision foreshadows the ultimate punchline of Darkblood's story arc in the comics. When he returns to the Pentagon to report his findings, the secretary at the front desk laughs at him because Omni-Man has already confessed to the murders. This conclusion to Darkblood's investigation serves as a comedic beat rather than a dramatic resolution, highlighting the character's ineffectiveness as a detective, despite his supernatural origins. His powers and abilities are very different in comics versus animated series. Damien Darkblood's powers and abilities vary significantly between the comic book series and the animated television adaptation. In the comics, Darkblood is depicted with a few notable abilities. He has heat resistance, which is explicitly mentioned in the Astounding Wolfman number 23. Additionally, he is suggested to have above-average human strength, though this is not consistently shown in the comics. It is also implied that he has extensive knowledge of occult magic due to his background in Hell, and as a demon, he is likely immortal, though this is not explicitly stated. However, his detective skills are portrayed as ineffective, and he is often mocked for his lack of success in investigation. In contrast, the animated series presents Darkblood with a broader range of abilities. He can teleport, appearing and disappearing at will, often without warning. He also possesses psychometry, allowing him to gain impressions of past events by touching evidence or blood, which aids him in his investigations. Furthermore, he can turn invisible, enabling him to move undetected. His presence causes the air to cool significantly, which can affect electronics and plant life, and he seems to have enhanced senses, though this is not explicitly stated. The show also suggests that he has some form of demon magic, though these abilities are not fully explored. The television series portrays Darkblood as a competent and resourceful detective, leveraging these abilities to drive the plot forward. A very different character in the comic books. Perhaps the most notable aspect of Damien Darkblood's portrayal in the Invincible comics is how dramatically it differs from his later adaptation in the animated series. In the original comics, Darkblood was conceived primarily as comic relief, a character whose self-serious demeanor and melodramatic persona were played for laughs rather than drama. His investigation of the Guardian murders, which ends with him being late to discover what readers already know, serves as a punchline rather than a substantive subplot. Darkblood is depicted in the comics as a terrible detective, routinely mocked by other characters for his ineffectiveness. His outdated noir detective aesthetic, complete with fedora, trench coat, and hard-boiled mannerisms, is portrayed as anachronistic and slightly ridiculous in the modern setting of Invincible. This portrayal creates a humorous dissonance between Darkblood's self-image as a formidable supernatural investigator and his actual effectiveness within the story. Robert Kirkman himself has acknowledged that Darkblood was only introduced to be a punchline in the main comics and was never spoken of again. This frank assessment confirms that the character was never intended to carry significant narrative weight in the original comic series, explaining his limited appearances and lack of character development. Does he appear anywhere else, apart from Invincible comics? Beyond his brief role in the Guardian Globe murder investigation, Darkblood makes very few appearances in the Invincible comics. He appears in only a handful of the 144 issues that comprise the complete series. This limited presence reinforces his status as a peripheral character in Kirkman's universe, one whose potential was largely unrealized in the original medium. In addition to his appearances in Invincible proper, Darkblood makes a brief cameo in issue number 23 of The Astounding Wolfman, where he mentions his heat resistance ability. This cross-series appearance suggests that Kirkman saw value in the character as a recurring element in his shared universe, even if he never developed Darkblood into a major player. The scarcity of Darkblood's appearances in the comics stands in stark contrast to his expanded role in the animated adaptation, where he serves as a crucial figure in the early episodes and drives significant plot developments. This disparity highlights how adaptations can sometimes identify identify and develop potential in characters that remained untapped in their original incarnation. Despite his limited role in the comics, Damien Darkblood represents an intriguing concept with considerable narrative potential. A demon who escaped from hell and dedicated himself to solving crimes on Earth raises fascinating questions about redemption, punishment, and the nature of good and evil, themes that resonate strongly with the broader moral complexities explored in Invincible. In one of the few hints about his backstory, Darkblood alludes to a violent past and a subsequent change of heart. This suggestion of a redemption arc, a demon seeking to atone for past sins through service to justice, contains rich dramatic possibilities that remain largely unexplored in the comic series. What drove Darkblood to escape hell? What crimes or sins is he attempting to atone for? How does his demonic nature conflict with his chosen role as an agent of justice? These questions, while compelling, are never addressed in the original comics. Similarly, the mere existence of Darkblood confirms the presence of hell as a literal place within the Invincible universe, raising significant theological and cosmological questions. As one Reddit user noted, hell exists in this universe. There is an afterlife. It is confirmed to exist. You can go there. You can physically speak to demons from there. This implication that divine and infernal forces exist alongside the sci-fi elements and superheroics of Invincible represents a fascinating world-building element that Kirkman chose not to develop further in the original comics. He was mere comic relief in comic books, but a serious character in animated series. While this exploration focuses primarily on Darkblood's portrayal in the comics, it's worth noting the significant expansion of his character in the Amazon Prime animated adaptation. The show transformed Darkblood from a minor punchline character into a compelling, competent detective whose investigation drives much of the early narrative tension. Unlike his comic counterpart, the television version of Darkblood quickly deduces Omni-Man's guilt and becomes determined to expose the truth, placing him in direct conflict with both the murderous hero and the government agencies seeking to manage the situation. This portrayal adds dramatic weight to a character who had little impact in his original incarnation. The television adaptation also provides Darkblood with a clearer backstory, establishing him as a demon escaped from hell, righting wrongs through crime solving in order to pay penance and avoid being returned to the inferno. This motivation, absent from the comics, gives the character a defined arc and personal stakes that were missing from Kirkman's original conception. Robert Kirkman and the show's creative team have demonstrated a willingness to expand Darkblood's role beyond his comic book origins, suggesting that they recognized untapped potential in the character. This adaptation represents a case where the transition between media allowed for the development and enrichment of a character whose possibilities remained largely unrealized in his original format. Robert Kirkman has offered limited but illuminating comments about Damien Darkblood and his role in the Invincible universe. As previously noted, Kirkman has acknowledged that Darkblood was only introduced to be a punchline in the main comics and was never spoken of again. This frank assessment confirms that the character's intended function as comic relief rather than as a significant narrative force. Kirkman has also mentioned that he originally planned to develop a story exploring Darkblood's history with Hell, but ultimately decided against it. This abandoned storyline suggests that Kirkman did see potential in the character, but chose to focus on other elements of his expansive superhero universe instead. In Invincible Compendium 3, Kirkman notes that he originally planned to have the pivotal confrontation between Mark Grayson and his father Omni-Man occur in issue number 25, but accelerated this timeline to drive comic sales. This decision to expedite the main plot may have contributed to the truncation of various subplots, potentially including a more substantial role for Darkblood. As one commenter suggested, it's possible that Damien Darkblood was originally going to have a larger role in the story, but was cut in order to get the main plot going faster. With the new post-credit scene from the Season 3 finale of the animated series, everything seems to have shifted. It looks like Damien is set to become a prominent character in the series, at least for half an arc. Fingers crossed. Many fans love Damien's character for his similarities to Hellboy and Rorschach, and it was disheartening to see him exit so quickly in the earlier arcs. It's great to see him making a comeback and reclaiming his place in the storyline. That wraps up everything we have for you today about Damien Darkblood. If you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe and stay marvelous.